Welcome back to this latest episode of Japan's Top Business Interviews. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Story, President, Dale Carnegie Tokyo Training. My special guest today is Rodrigo Lima, who is the president of Danone here in Japan. Rodrigo, great pleasure.
Nice to see you, Greg. Thanks for the invite.
You've had a very interesting career, Rodrigo, actually, very interesting career. So just to give a little bit of background for people who may not know Danone, a little bit about what Danone does and what's special about it. Now let's go back into your history a little bit about how it is that you got into Japan as the president of Danone. So tell us a bit about Danone and a little bit about yourself.
All right. Danone is a global food company. Our mission is to bring health through food to as many people as possible. Globally, we have three divisions. One of them is what we call EDP, so essential dairy and plant-based products. These are all our yogurts, beverages, and plant-based beverages that we have. Then we have the specialized nutrition division, which is nutrition targeted at specific conditions that all of us go through at some point in our lives. And we also have the waters division globally. In Japan specifically, we are very strong with our essential dairy and plant-based division. We have brands like Oikos, like Bio, which are doing very well in Japan. So that's a bit about our company globally and locally in Japan.
That's great, because I think probably people see the products in the supermarkets or, they're drinking the drinks or eating the yogurts or whatever. They're probably familiar with that. But how about yourself? Where did you sort of start in your career and how did you get to Japan, I guess is a simple question.
Okay, so going back a few years. So I'm Brazilian originally. I started out my career in Brazil, actually in a different sector versus FMCG. I was working for the pharma sector in a company called Lilly.
Famous company.
Yes.
Very famous company, yeah.
So I spent 12 years at Lilly working in Brazil, in the US, did a lot of work with Europe as well, and last in Colombia. And then I got an opportunity to join Danone back home in Brazil. I wanted to go back to my home country at that point in time. Danone was a company that was extremely admired back home in Brazil, so it was an easy decision to make.
Which part of Brazil are you from?
I'm from Rio.
Rio itself. Okay,
yes,
great.
Yes. So I joined Danone in Brazil, and soon after there was an opportunity to go to India as general manager of our Indian branch. We had just recently acquired a branch of another nutrition company, an Indian nutrition company. So I went there to do the initial integration and that sort of stuff.
That must have been challenging.
It was very interesting.
When I talk to people about India, they talk about there's so many languages in India. There are so many ethnic variations within the Indian subcontinent, and the infrastructure is not as developed perhaps as it needs to be. And there's a lot of bureaucracy, red tape, and from the government side, everyone talks about it's quite a challenging work environment for international companies. So your integration must have been very challenging, I think.
It was not always smooth, but I have to say I have excellent memories of my time in India. I still have a lot of friends from that time. So it was a very memorable experience. We enjoyed it a lot.
How long have you
as
been
a
in
family? 4.5 years in India.
Oh, that's quite long.
Yes, yes.
Quite a long posting. Yeah.
Yes. So after India, we were very lucky to be sent to Australia, your homeland.
Yeah, which also is your homeland now.
Well, now it's my adopted home.
You became an Australian citizen as well.
Exactly. I absolutely love Australia. We as a family, we have opted to set Australia as our base because we like the country so much.
Does it feel to you a little bit like Brazil in the sense of, I've never been to Brazil, but when I look at it, big country, vast agricultural holdings, people around the coast in large cities. It sounds very similar to Australia in many ways. Yeah. And probably a little bit laid back, maybe like Australia's a bit laid back. Do you feel a familiarity there?
I see lots of similarities, but Australia is obviously much more developed than Brazil. So I'd like to say that Australia is the developed version of Brazil.
Oh, okay, all right, all right.
It's the Brazil that became successful over time, whereas right now Brazil is full of issues, political and social issues and growth issues as well. Australia, on the other hand, is doing extremely well. But I do see, as you say, a lot of cultural similarities. Both are countries of immigrants. And because of that, both are very multicultural. And it's very interesting to work in those countries because you see a lot of diversity, different ways of thinking. So, we enjoy being Australians a lot.
Well, after, being in Brazil, a very large population, India, massively big population, and India's a big subcontinent. It's a physical area. It's huge. And Brazil, huge, with lots of people. And then you go to Australia, there's hardly anybody there. So you must have felt, where's all the people around here?
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. Although, when you live in Sydney, Melbourne, etc., you don't feel isolated.
Crowded, right?
Yeah.
And how long are you in Australia?
5 years.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
In Sydney the whole time?
In Sydney, yeah, we had an office in Melbourne as well, so I traveled to Melbourne quite a lot, but most of the time in Sydney, yes.
Yeah, Sydney is a great town, incredibly expensive to have real estate there, as we all know, but I was posted there for 7 months around the time of the Olympics, and I was always shocked that I was sort of working Japanese standard hours, late that means, and I'd look out the window from this massive tower and could see over the harbour, and like 5:30 I see all these guys out on their yachts, sailing the yachts up and down the harbour. I thought, wow, what do you do after work? I just get the yacht out for a while. It's like fantastic lifestyles, unthinkable in Japan, just unthinkable. It's fantastic.
I agree. The lifestyle is amazing.
Yeah,
we do work a lot there, but people are not afraid to take some quality time off as well. Yeah.
And then from Australia to
Japan.
Right.
Yeah, about a year and a half ago. Yeah, I was extremely happy to get this
assignment. So a year and a half ago, you must have come just to the sort of tail end of COVID then, I guess.
It was already done and dusted.
By the time you got here?
Yeah.
Very good. It's hard to know when is the date, COVID sort of ended, but from a business point of view, it wasn't.
It's still around today, right? But the lockdowns and all of that, I didn't get any of that. I was in Sydney during all of those.
So I can imagine, Brazil, pretty flexible, open-minded, India, well, apart from the government bureaucracy, it's a big country. You have to be very adaptive. There's lots of things don't go the way you think it's going to go. You got to find workarounds. People have got to be thinking about, how to make things work. Australia, same thing. People are thinking about different ways of doing things, how we get around this. Let's try it. Let's experiment. All of those three countries, and then you get to Japan. Which is in many, many ways so different. So how was it when you first got here? What did you think about, well, okay, what am I noticing here in Japan in terms of business and how it's conducted that's a little bit different from my experience so far? What things stuck out for you?
Well, I would say, first of all, it's the engagement towards work. You see really that people are extremely committed to do a perfect job. Yeah, I think that's pretty obvious here. The way that decisions are made as well is very different than in the other countries. It's the consensus-driven, bottom-up decision process. That's very different as well from any other country that I've seen. And I think also the respect for hierarchy, especially compared to Australia, which was
no respect for hierarchy.
Absolutely zero respect for hierarchy. And then moving to Japan, which there's very high respect, that was a bit of a shock at the beginning as well. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I tell people, they may not notice it, but if you ever see country leaders getting into cars to go somewhere, every other country I've seen, they're always getting in the back seat of the car. But in Australia, the Prime Minister will get in the front seat next to the driver. And people are like dumbfounded by that. Wow, the Prime Minister is sitting in the front seat next to the driver. And part of that is that egalitarian mindset of, well, you might be the Prime Minister, I might be the driver, but you're no better than me. And they show that by where they sit. I'm sure when the cameras have gone, they're in the back seat, but for the cameras, at least they're in the front seat. So I think Australia is a very much more anti-hierarchy, egalitarian culture. And this one is respect for age and stage, seniority is very, very different in that sense.
Extremely different, yes.
Yeah, I noticed that. And so what about in terms of, it's very hard to prepare yourself for Japan, I think. And that's one of the reasons of this podcast, to try and help people to prepare themselves for Japan and what they're going to face as a leader. And I mean, you can go through some cultural training, some do's and don'ts, and that's good. But those things never really touch on what it means to lead in this country and what it means to apply a different way of doing things here than maybe you were doing somewhere else. So in terms of things that occurred to you as a leader, from the leader viewpoint, that you thought were, this is quite different. You mentioned about the hierarchy, you mentioned about bottom-up decision-making. But apart from those things, any of the things that you sort of struck was, my role as a leader here is going to be a bit different from what I maybe expected or maybe what I've experienced?
Yeah, I think besides the 2 points that I've mentioned, the other one that I struggled a bit at the beginning is to get on-the-spot answers. So usually in big meetings, when you ask a question to the team or you make a challenge or something like that, the response is, we hear you, let me go back, work with my team, and then I come back to you next week with a position. And that was a bit complex for me to navigate at the beginning because I was used to working in the other countries.
So you were expecting an answer on the spot?
An answer or a decision or an opinion.
And they're saying, we'll get back to you in a week's time.
We'll get back to you.
Slow down there, Rodrigo, we'll get back in a week's time. Yeah.
Because usually they have to consult with their team and respect the bottom-up decision process to be able to come with a firm opinion. So that took me a bit of time to get used to. So that was one thing. And then the other thing that was a bit strange for me at the beginning, now I'm used to it, in big meetings where we have to make big decisions, usually when the projects are presented to me, to the leadership team, there is already consensus from the team. So it's very hard for us to change things once we get to that point because everything has been aligned, has been decided by the team. So if you want to make a difference, that's one of my observations in this 1.5 years, you need to be able to know what's going on before you get to that stage so that you can try to influence a bit more. When it gets to the big formal meetings, it's probably too late already for you to change the direction.
Has been made, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a good point you raise, because I think the Western way is we get in the meeting room, we have a vigorous discussion, even a debate, hopefully not an argument, but hopefully a vigorous debate, and we consider all things, and then we say, okay, boom, we're going to do this, and then it's noted, and then everyone get to work on it, and away we go. As you say, though, making sure everyone's happy and compromises and adjustments and everyone knows what's going on. The communication's working extremely well about what's coming, and they're thinking ahead 10 steps of what could possibly go wrong and trying to counterbalance that before they present it. So it is a bit of a cooked meal by the time you get it. And as you say, unless you've got some window into that process, because you might be thinking this way, and they're thinking that way, and then you go, we've gone the wrong direction from what I think. What do I do now? You're sort of stuck.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Do you, although I suppose you're still the boss, you can still say, well, look, that's great, but actually I need this, this, and this, which you haven't considered, so please go away and come back and give me that as well. I suppose that's always an outcome.
Yeah. Last resort, you can do that, obviously. But
can't do it every time.
It's less traumatic for the team, I think, if you try to avoid that. Yeah.
And what about, getting people behind you as leaders? Because you come in, they don't know you. They know you know the company, but they don't know you. They don't quite know, what you want. And you have to get them engaged to follow you as a leader. And you've been in different, worked in outside of Brazil, you've worked in Europe, States, you've worked in Australia, you've worked in India. So this is not your first rodeo to have to make that adjustment with a new team. But over the course of your career, and particularly looking at what's happening in Japan, what things have you found worked well to engage a team to follow you as the leader?
Yeah, I think there are some universal practices that I adopt when I come into a new country. Well, first of all is to understand the culture and the local business practices and try to respect that as much as possible. I think it's unrealistic for a leader to expect that the whole team, the whole country will change their behavior just to adapt to his or her
I'm
own.
here.
Yeah.
Okay, this is how we're going to do it.
So
Good luck with that.
As much as you can, try to adjust to the local practices.
And how do you do that? I mean, for example, in many ways, it's a course of discovery, isn't it? Because you don't know what you don't know, and then you think things are going to work a certain way, and then you realize, oh, it doesn't work that way, or they think differently. And so how do you go about making that adjustment? How do you anticipate that, or is it always reactive, or how does it work?
I'm not sure there's a science to it, or there must be a science, but I'm not aware of it.
Well, I'm not aware of it either. I've been here for 40 years, so I don't think there is a science to it. It's probably more of an art, I think.
Yeah. I think in my case, it's just about observation. I'm a very observant person. I'm not sure if that word exists in English, but I observe a lot. I'm a bit of an introvert sometimes, so the advantage of that is that you're quiet a lot of the times and you're listening and you're observing. So I try to do that as much as I can, especially at the beginning. Afterwards, you get a little bit looser and you start to become more extrovert and be more participant. But at the beginning, I'm very quiet and I observe a lot.
I think also the fact that, you're speaking multiple languages yourself. I'm sure most of the Japanese in this building with Danone are speaking Japanese and English, and probably that's it, and probably English to a certain degree. So I think when we're dealing with non-native speakers, we are reading lots, because like when I speak in Japanese, my vocabulary in English is vast compared to my vocabulary in Japanese. So I have a limited range of words that I can draw on to express my thoughts compared to English. So it tends to be not as nuanced or as perhaps sophisticated as my native language. And so a lot's going on probably with body language and tone and things that are also communicating what I'm trying to express. And I'm wondering, have you found that too, that you listen to people speaking in English who are not native speakers, you're reading a lot more than just the words, I guess, which is also part of that observation component, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. Today, after 1 year and a half, I can read the body language of the Japanese team much better than at the beginning, I have to say. At the beginning, I didn't have that ability. So I misread a lot of the body language that was going on there. But yes, you learn that with time.
And so you mentioned, being observant and adjusting in terms of how to get people engaged and follow you. What else did you find or have found works to get teams to follow you as the new leader?
Yeah, so the second thing, I think it's universal as well. It's about repetition. So you have a vision, of course, for the business. You've developed that vision. Hopefully you've spent some time developing that vision so it's robust, it's based on data. And then afterwards, it's about repeating it as much as you can.
Now, is that vision, is this, Rodrigo goes to the top of the mountain in the straw hut and contemplates the world and contemplates the future and where's Danone's place in the world, and writes down the vision and comes down from the mountain and says, okay, gang, here's the vision, get behind this? Or is it Rodrigo constructing the vision with the team? How does it, which way do you prefer?
Definitely the second one, definitely with the team. So we have a leadership team in Danone, which we call the CODI. So usually we build the vision together with the Cody and with the participation of the extended leadership team as well. So key people in the organization that can help us build this vision. So we built this strategy together. We co-built the strategy together, and then start communicating in an effective way, through various means, through monthly town halls, annual convention meetings, online as well. So the repetition of the message, I think it's very, very key for people to understand, absorb, and adopt it.
Sometimes, you said this was universal, so I'm guessing your experience has been, be it Brazil, India, Australia, Europe, America, wherever, that this process is a requirement, or is there an extra flavour in Japan of a higher need of more repetition or more frequent repetition? Or is there any difference here, or it's pretty much, it's common?
I personally don't see a big difference in that. I think it's the same everywhere. You need to communicate your vision many times so that people see that you're consistent, that you're serious about it, and they start to adopt it. So I think it's universal. What we specifically do at Danone is we have the vision, the strategy, and then we drill it down into key battles. So every year we have some specific key battles that we have to achieve in order to reach that vision in a given year. So that's the other one that we repeat a lot in here. Is what are our specific key battles for 2025, for example. So that's the other thing that we do. And I think pretty much everywhere in Danone, we do that, regardless of the country where you're in. And it seems to work, in my point of view.
We talked before about bottom-up decision-making, etc. And what about idea generation? Now, you have a vast empire of R&D people, because the nature of your business, it's a high science, fact-driven business around experimentation and coming up with things that work. So you've got that part of it. I'm not talking about that type of idea generation, but just the people working in the company who are not scientists or not R&D specialists, but they have a functionality. It might be in finance or marketing or logistics or the factory or whatever it might be. There's all different elements of the company. What have you found works well to get ideas to come up to you? And I'm asking this particularly in Japan, because my experience with foreigners, we tend to have ideas and we're happy to voice our ideas to the boss and tell the boss our idea. We're not scared to tell the boss our idea. Hey, boss, I got this idea. But this country, it's a little bit, we talked before about, hierarchy. It's a little bit different here around that, and not maybe so easy to get people to bottom up an idea for where we could go with the company. So what have you found works well to harvest, all those good ideas that are sitting in the brains out there, but maybe not necessarily coming to the surface?
Yeah, I think there's one thing that we do here that works pretty well for our business, which is make innovation into a process.
Okay.
So I'm speaking about local innovation here, flavors, packaging innovation, that sort of stuff. So we have an annual ideation process where we bring a bunch of people together and we brainstorm new innovation ideas that can be implemented globally.
Do you have is there a Danone, certified brainstorming methodology used as common around the world, or have you got something special here? Or
I don't think it's anything different than what is done in other places.
Well, I asked the question because I had a previous boss. He was ex-military. Every February, we go to Vietnam for the offsite. All the heads of the businesses will turn up because it's nice and warm there in February. Go surfing. For Australians, we like that. And oh my God, he'd rule that meeting with an iron rod, and he'd have the marker in his hand, the pen in his hand. He'd say, okay, give me some ideas on this, That's stupid. That'll never work. Next. Okay, we try that. Next, within about 3 minutes, everyone's staring at their shoes because they don't want to make eye contact.
Yeah.
People who put their hand up, put their eye, getting crucified on the spot. It was horrible.
Wow.
And I never understood why he did that, but he always did it like that. It was horrible. And so, that I could see in a so-called brainstorming environment, that was definitely not the way to do it. And there are other ways that are much better. But I'm just wondering whether you guys have hit upon a good way of doing it.
No, I think we do quite the opposite of that, because it's we follow a stage gate innovation process. So at the ideation phase, every idea is a good one. Okay,
no critique, no criticism.
There's no such thing as a
all
bad
crazy
idea.
ideas welcome.
Exactly. And then you list all of those ideas, and then in the second stage you start to filter which are the ones that you think are more promising. And then after that, there's a very formal stage gate process until you actually launch something.
If you want to be successful as a leader, do the Leadership Training for Managers course. All companies need people who can both manage and lead. Leading people screams out for real skills in communication, dealing with all different types of people, being excellent at innovation, planning, delegation, handling mistakes, doing performance reviews really well, and inspiring and motivating the team. Do the Leadership Training for Managers course now in either Japanese or English. Leading is easy. Getting people to follow is the hard part. That is a great quote from Yogi Berra. Surprisingly, despite the complexities of leading here in Japan, everyone has to work it out by themselves. Foreign leaders want practical, applicable, expert advice. This is now available for the first time in history. Grab your copy of Japan Leadership Mastery on Amazon today and avoid the mystery, trial and error, especially the errors. In that second stage, I mean, the first part, all crazy ideas welcome, go for it. We cover the walls of the room as usual, fantastic. The second stage, it could be De Bono's black hat approach of the negativity aspect of some ideas, what's wrong with them, and weeding out which ones go forward and which ones don't go forward. That part of it, because there's a judgment required there. How is that judgment made? Because you've got a group of people, I'm guessing they're in small groups or one big group, I'm not sure. Because in any sort of typical brainstorming environment, the more confident, more articulate people can dominate the discussion, and the deep thinkers, the introverts, like you and me, can be sort of left aside, and their ideas never get to the surface of the meeting at all, because the more bolshy, powerful people dominate the airwaves, and their ideas go up and the other ideas don't. Yeah. So what have you found to deal with that type of difficulty?
Well, I think two things that I can think of right now. Well, first of all, it's the art of moderation. So you need to have a good moderator that keeps attentive to who's speaking, who's dominating,
and who's not speaking.
Exactly.
Get them involved. Yeah?
To get them involved. That's one thing. But then from a more technical perspective, how you filter out the ideas that we would like to progress to later stages, I think it's first of all, fit with strategy. Number one, does it fit with our current strategy, or is it something outside of the strategy? And the second one is the right to win. Do we as a company, given our strengths, our capabilities, do we have a right to win at that space? Can we be better than the competition? Can we be better than other companies at that specific innovation? If yes, then okay, then we progress.
Right.
If not, then we leave it.
Why are we
deprioritize. Yeah.
Okay, great. So this is a very good process you have. And what about building trust? Because trust is important everywhere, every culture. But somehow, I always think the trust element in Japan is somehow, I don't know, stronger or something. Like, over the many years I've been here, getting job resumes and hiring people, I'd go through them and there'd be blanks, like they'd be working for a company, and then they'd change jobs, and I'd ask them what's going on. And often people would tell me things like, well, my senior from a previous company called me to quit where I am now and go and work for this new company that he's joined, usually he. And then often what would happen, the foreign company would close everything down, everyone gets sacked and lose their jobs and get on the market again, That often happened too, And I thought about that. I thought, wow, that human connection, that trust, to quit your existing job and then take the risk of going and taking a new company, a new job. There's something illogical about that, which is very emotional in a way. It's not a logical choice, it's an emotional choice, which also I think Japanese are quite emotional. It doesn't look like it, but they are. And you look at these sorts of examples, that's a pure emotionally driven idea. And so that trusting here, obligation, returning favor, being accountable to other people, it's really woven into the fabric of the culture. So trust is it's important everywhere. I mean, I'm not saying it's not important everywhere, but I think there's some edge to it here. What have you found has worked well to build trust in you as a leader here in the company?
So before I go into that, let me just say that this element of people following the leaders, it's very common in my experience, even in other countries. You see that a lot in Latin America as well. You see that a lot in India. There's a story even before I joined our Indian business that one senior manager left the company, and then within 1 or 2 weeks, 100 people followed him.
Wow.
So you imagine,
trying to replace 100 people.
Exactly.
At one time.
It was a crisis that we had there. It was before my time there. So I think it's common in other cultures as well. Maybe not in Australia, not in the US or Europe. I can see that doesn't happen.
Australians are pretty independent.
Very independent.
They want to go, they go.
Yeah.
You want me to come? I'm not sure about that. I'm not coming.
Yeah, exactly. So it's common. So going back to how to build trust in Japan, I'm not sure that I have the perfect formula after 1.5 years here. You probably have a much better formula than I. But what I do is, going back to the previous point, is first of all, respect their culture, respect the habits and the practices that are going on. But then at the same time, be very transparent as well. If you want to be trustworthy, in my point of view, you have to be transparent. Tell them what you can, what you know. Tell them openly what you cannot say because it's confidential within the company, but be transparent.
What about transparency around your vulnerabilities, transparency around your mistakes, transparency around your misjudgments, for example? Because, as the leader, we feel some pressure to be the Mr. or Miss Perfect, we're the boss, we should be really good and we never make a mistake, we're wonderful, and you people should be like us, type of thing. And we always had that sort of imposter syndrome fear that if I admit I'm not perfect, they won't follow me because they won't respect me because they put me up on the pedestal and I have to operate on the pedestal and be the example for everybody. But we are human beings, we're not perfect and we have misjudgments and we make mistakes and we make the wrong call and we screw things up at different times. We say the wrong thing, and this is there. But how do you balance out that side of being transparent?
So maybe I'm a bit strange, but I have no aspiration to be perfect. Maybe it's because I'm reaching my retirement age at some point. But I'm completely transparent with what I know, what I don't know. Because one of the things that I'm most scared about is the unknown unknowns. So you have to know what you don't know. The most dangerous thing I think in companies is people who are too self-confident and they think they know everything, especially as soon as they arrive in a new role. And
that sounds very similar to me, to be honest. I tend to be like that. And I know that about myself, that I have a lot of optimism. I'm probably too optimistic. I have a lot of confidence, I have a lot of go, a lot of energy, and sometimes you can actually drive the thing off the cliff.
Yes.
Because you've got to actually have some restraint on yourself. And what was it they said that when the Roman emperors had their triumph, that the guy standing next to them in the chariot was whispering in the ear, "You are not a god. You are not a god," to restrain their massive egos.
Yeah.
I think we've got to have "You are not a god" in our own ears sometimes too, and I know that about myself. So yes, you just described me.
Yeah. So one of the things that I like to do is I'm very self-aware, so I know what my strengths and where my weaknesses are. So I like to build a team around my weaknesses so that they can fill those gaps. So as a team, we are stronger. But it's very critical to be self-aware, I think.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And so, any other points on trust? You talked about transparency. You talked about communication before. Lots of repetition of the communication. All these things are good. Any other things you found work well in building trust with people?
So the other thing I was thinking of is, sometimes we can be obsessed with, Japanese culture is like that. We have to follow that. But there is a lot of uniqueness in each and every company out there. So it's not like all Japanese companies have the same culture and all operate in the same way. There's some very different within the Japanese company community. There are some very different company cultures out there,
and particularly between urban and rural.
Yes,
and also regional. There are quite distinct regional variations in Japan in the cuisine and the culture and the language. And so naturally, they're going to operate. It's one country, but it's actually a lot of little different places in many ways.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Osaka culture, for example, Nagoya culture. I've lived in both of those. Well, I lived in Kobe, worked in Osaka, lived in Nagoya. I can tell you they are totally different from Tokyo in many aspects. Some similar, but many aspects are quite specifically different.
And even within the same cities, every company is different, right? So one piece of advice that I have for newcomers is don't be afraid to build your own unique company culture. Not because you believe that Japanese culture is a certain way, that your unique culture will not work here.
Well, let's talk a bit about culture, because that was a question I was going to come to. Because you have global Danone culture, the umbrella culture, and then you have Japan culture, because the people here are mainly Japanese, and then you have Rodrigo culture, how you want it to be as the leader. So how do you go about creating that culture here that you think is the right one, the right combination of things, or the right proportion of things, or the one that you just feel is the good way of doing things?
Obviously, it cannot be exactly like I want it to be, because you have to adapt a bit to the company culture and to the country culture as well. So I think it's about finding that sweet spot. What is the best way that you can implement the company culture, respecting the country, their practices, and also your personal values, your personal ambition as well. So I think it's about balancing these three aspects.
Because you set the tone. I mean, as a leader, your value set, your ability to be transparent, consistent, clear, all of that stuff as a leader is required, but you're also setting a tone on how you think people should work, on how we should think about safety, particularly your businesses. Safety around factory workers, safety around the quality of the food product for the consumers, the packaging, integrity, there's so many aspects of that. And you set a tone around that as well, because then people follow that lead. So anything else you found works well around driving the type of cultural alignment that you think is the best for the company?
Yeah. So I think I'm lucky because I work in a company that the values of the company match with my values as well, right? So we have 4 key values within Danone. We follow the acronym HOPE: humanism, openness, proximity, and enthusiasm. So those are the values that we want to drive in every single business that we have in many different countries. And it resonates a lot with me. And I try to follow those 4 values on a day-to-day basis as well.
Well, that's a good point, because often companies have, particularly in Japan, by the way, quite elaborate vision statements, usually penned by the president. Vision statements or mission statements, values, glass frame on the wall, it's beautifully presented on the paper, everything. But often it doesn't go beyond the wall. It sort of gets stuck behind the glass. And the actual way of taking that off the wall and putting it into people to live it, sometimes that part's not there. And it becomes something that we all think that's a great idea, but it's not the determinant of how people behave with each other, how they behave with suppliers, how they behave with consumers or clients. And this is not really congruent between one hand they're saying things over here, but in fact they're doing this over here. So how do you get around that problem of it's stuck in the wall behind the glass, protected there, but it's not in the heart of the people?
Yeah, so gladly, I don't think we have that problem in Danone because, well, first of all, the values are very simple to communicate, and I think they resonate with most people. So I hope, I like to believe that we don't have that issue here as well. The other thing that we have in Danone, which I find very interesting, is we have a set of behaviors that the company values and they ask us to follow on a daily basis. And out of these behaviors, the one that is most useful to us as leaders on a day-to-day basis, it's called put Danone first.
Put Danone first.
Put Danone first. So let's say we're having a debate among different functions in Danone. Each function is trying to pursue their own KPIs, their own objectives. But when we say, okay, let's put Danone first, then immediately everybody switches something in their brain and everybody starts to think, what is best for the consumer? What is best for the business? And let's just focus on that, regardless of individual functional interest that we have.
Just on that putting Danone first, I get the point, but often it's a sort of related point in the sense of often with salespeople, sales leaders or leaders of the companies will tell me, look, we love the fact that our salespeople are very client-focused, but sometimes we think they're a bit too client-focused and they're putting the client above the interests of the company, and we'd like them to be a little bit more company-oriented in terms of the outcomes rather than sacrificing everything for the client. And somehow we don't feel the balance is quite right. And that's quite common in Japan because there is that strong identification with the buyer to keep the buyer loyal and satisfied and consistent and repeating as a buyer, that to do everything for the client, even maybe to the detriment perhaps of the company in some stages. So again, how do you go around balancing that aspect of one, Danone first and this drive for the client first?
So obviously we have those discussions on a daily basis. We are in Japan after all. I don't think those two ideas are opposing because at the end of the day, if you are valuing your customer, if you're doing something for your customer today, over the long term, that's going to benefit Danone. That's going to benefit you as a company. So I think it's even a good practice to have to say, okay, how does this put Danone first? And then there's a distinction between short-term gain for Danone. Let's say that we don't give a special discount or we don't do a special promotion or something like that. But is this going to benefit us over the long term? So usually the salespeople are extremely wise. I was a salesperson myself for a big portion of my career. And I think they're much more connected to the market than the rest of us who are working inside the office in the air conditioning. So I'd like to listen to the salespeople a lot. And usually they know what's best for the company over the long term. So I think those ideas are not conflictant. We can...
In fact, I always think it's a very good practice for newly arrived leaders to make a beeline for clients and go and talk to clients, because often you get here and things don't quite look right. Why are we doing this? This doesn't look right to me. Is something strange, and then when you bring it up with the Japanese staff, they're very, very stuck in doing it this way, and maybe they can't articulate it in English so well, or the interpretation doesn't give you the nuance of what's being said, and you think they're opposing you. And then you go and talk to the client, you realize, that's why. That's why they're saying that. Oh, this is important to the client. I didn't know that. In Japan, it works like this. They don't have a lot of warehouse space, or they don't have vans that can transport huge amounts of product through the narrow streets of Tokyo or something, That, I think, is always a very good practice before you start getting into thinking that people are opposed to what you're thinking or being obnoxious and being difficult with their different opinion to you. go with the salespeople and meet the clients and find out what they want. And I think it's a very revealing conversation.
Yeah.
And the earlier, the better.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to the unknown unknowns that we were speaking before. Many times leaders make very fast decisions once they arrive in a new business, in a new country. And
I've worked it out.
yeah,
I got it.
Yeah,
Eureka.
I'm smarter than you, so yes, I have the
do.
solution. Yeah.
Just do what I say, we'll all be fine.
Yeah.
Good point. And what about if, just on that issue, if someone called you up and said, you know, Rodrigo, I'm being posted to run our organization in Japan as the president, and I don't know anything about Japan, I don't speak Japanese, I have no idea. But you've been there for a year and a half, you've done the hard yards, you've made that adjustment, you've learned a lot in that process. Give me some advice, Rodrigo. What can I do to be an effective leader in Japan? What advice would you give them?
Well, first advice is to speak to people who are more experienced in Japan than I, like you, for example, because this is a country that you cannot figure out in just 1 year and a half. No. But for whatever it's worth. In this
case for you, apart from me, of course, but for you, where did you find access to people you could go and talk to who've been here, like long-termers, or I don't mean 40 years like me, but you've been here, if you've been in Japan 5 years and you haven't worked it out by now, then seriously, you're not worth talking to. But I think just about everybody's got something to offer after that, some substantial period of time here. Where do you source them? How do you find them here?
So I think I was lucky because Danone works with a select group of consultants that have been here for a very long time. So that small group of people, they're always very good, trusted advisors for me.
Are you talking lawyers, accountants? Are you talking just,
business and strategy consultants?
Business strategy consultants who operate in Japan. They're global. They have an operation here.
Yeah. And these are people that we have a long-term relationship. They understand Danone very well. Mm-hmm. So at the beginning, I could rely on those people a lot. And then afterwards, when you start to attend business meetings, like at the French Chamber of Commerce, for example, you always build connections with certain key people who have been here much longer, and you always get a lot of advice from those people as well. So I was lucky to rely on this initial group of consultants that we work with here in Danone, and also I've developed a good network here of expats that have been in Japan for much more time than I, and we maintain regular contact as well. Yeah.
And so what else would you recommend to people who are coming here to be effective as a leader?
So I think I go back to some bits and pieces that I've mentioned before. So first of all, respect the culture, respect the ways of working, and the business practices.
So what do you do when you respect the culture here, which in Japan means decisions are group-based, take a long time to come up. The way of working is different. And yet, the person who gets on the plane, the sort of last conversation with their boss is, we expect to see the numbers improve. And if you don't make the numbers improve, you're fired. So get on that plane and go over there and get to work,
Yeah,
They've got this incredible pressure on them to perform when they get to Japan, and there's no understanding of how Japan works because they don't know themselves usually, and so they feel this. I have to hustle, and I've got to make things go fast. And I've got to first 90 days. I've got to make things pop. Well, good luck with that. So, what's your advice for them to counterbalance that pressure they've got?
That's a very interesting question because I think, regardless of the pressure, you have to respect the local culture, because if you don't, you're not going to get anywhere. Now, that doesn't mean that you cannot implement the changes that you want, right? You just need to know how to operate. So the second thing I would say is be clear with the team on what's the goal, what you want to achieve, by when, and then let them work on it for whatever time is required. And then they'll get back with usually a very good solution, a very well thought through solution that has taken into consideration many opinions within the company from many different functions. So usually you get back a solution that is very robust.
And it's usually a coordinated decision, so that when the decision is accepted and then, okay, we're going to execute, suddenly everything turns on at the same
Yes.
time equally, and there's no sabotage or resistance or, still want to argue the point about something. It's button gets pushed, everything takes off at the same time.
Yes.
I think, we can argue which is better, debate in the room, come to an agreement, and then people don't support it and they still want to argue about it later, and then you don't get the execution, or you have trouble getting to the execution agreement point. Sorry, get to the agreement point, and then the execution is very fast. So which is better? You could debate that, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's usually a decision with a big D that it has been taken because everybody's aligned and everybody's going to go in that direction. Yeah.
What else would you give advice to them that they should be doing or should they be thinking?
And the other thing is don't be paralyzed by your perceptions of Japanese culture. As we were discussing before, don't be afraid to implement your own unique vision of what you want the culture of your local company to be, because there is a lot of flexibility within the Japanese business culture as well. So sometimes I think leaders get paralyzed thinking that they have to behave in a certain way. And it's not as strict as we think it is coming from the outside and being shocked by that.
You look at these, we teach personality styles and how to communicate with different personality styles, how to sell, how to lead. The Japanese are not one uniform group. I mean, some are very detail-oriented, many, I would say, but others are quite, big picture thinkers, and some are go, 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 and others are, let's have a cup of tea and get to know each other. There's different formations within the Japanese culture and groups, because when we do this, we have a process where we divide out where people think they sit amongst these four groups, and we always get four groups. It's not get one group or just two groups. We usually, might be varying numbers, but there are people of different dimensions there, and they have different requirements around how they're communicated to and how you lead them. So you've got it's not a one-to-many, it's really a one-on-one in many ways, isn't it? Yeah. What else?
Yeah, I think that's what I can think of right now.
What about Japanese language? Should they learn Japanese language? And how's your Japanese language study coming along?
I've been trying very hard, but unfortunately the progress is underwhelming.
Well, you speak Portuguese, obviously. Do you speak Spanish as well?
Yes.
Right, English, and any other languages?
And that's it.
That's still pretty good. I mean, that's pretty good. 3 languages plus Japanese, your 4th language.
Yeah. I've been taking classes 1 hour per week, but the progress is not that great.
Well, I mean, when I worked in Nagoya, we had a very small team, and because I wanted to improve my Japanese, but English was the language of the organisation, we used to do Monday and Wednesday was English day, and Tuesday and Thursday was Japanese day, and then Friday was your choice. So we divided up like that to give everyone equal chance to improve in the other language, me included. I don't do that now in my company because everyone's got really good English already, basically. I'm the one who probably should be making more Japanese for my own personal selfish sake. But anyway, but what do you think? Should they do something themselves?
I think they should definitely try and take classes. Yes, because it makes a difference. Even if you speak just a few words, I think it makes a huge difference. Yeah.
And also, I think in meetings too. We talked before about reading body language, but also, of course, it's much more difficult to speak than to listen and understand some semblance of what is going on, and get some sense of what's going on. Even though you may not have the language down perfectly, you can understand after a while. You can understand certain things that are going on and get the general drift of where we're going with this. And maybe you need some very detailed explanation about certain key points, but you're not completely out of it. And plus the body language part, even that small facility welded together, still gives you some angle on things.
That's a great point. I'm not quite at that stage yet where I can understand a lot of what's going on in the meetings, but I can understand a few words here and there and read the body language as you say. So it definitely helps.
Now here's a very important translation for you, particularly you spend time in Australia. When people often translate the word muzgashi, it's translated into English as difficult. Oh, it's going to be difficult. In Japan, the better translation in Japan, when people tell you in business, it's going to be muzgashi, The better translation is it's impossible.
Ah, okay.
Because you know this, having lived in Australia, working with Australians. You tell Australians it's difficult, no worries. We'll find a way. We'll go over it, through it, under it, around it. But when you tell them it's impossible, it stops them in their tracks and they really think about, it's impossible. You have to really think about this, So let's think about it. Don't think Muzgashi is difficult. Think what you're being told is this is impossible.
That I didn't know.
Yeah, it's a hint. It's a hint. Yeah, it's a hint. It's a hint. And the other one is wakarimasen. When people tell you wakarimasen, I don't understand. Often with staff, they understand. They understand perfectly. They're using wakarimasen as code word for I don't agree.
Ah, okay.
They understand. They're just not
Good
going to tell you.
insight. Yeah.
They're not going to tell you they disagree with you. They say I don't understand, but it's actually they understand. It's I don't agree. So that's another code one.
I'll take note of these 2 points.
Yeah, when people start telling you wakarimasen, you say, well, it's not it's not a linguistic problem here. It's an attitudinal problem or a position problem or a something problem. What about your definition of leadership? How would you define leadership?
I think it's about bringing people along with you. First of all, be genuinely interested in their well-being, their development, their growth. Try to reach a common vision, and then bring everybody along in the journey. Motivate the people to follow the ideas that were co-built as much as you can. So that's my definition of leadership.
Any particular work habits that you've picked up over the years? Because you've worked in the European continent, the American continent, South American continent, Indian subcontinent, Australia's a continent. You just about covered. I think Africa's probably the only one you're missing.
I haven't worked in Africa, no.
But you've seen a lot. You've been across different cultures, different organisations, and also within Danone. And anything in the course of your career you've picked up as a work habit or a discipline or whatever, which has served you well?
Let's see. I think there's one thing that in Brazil we have in common with Australia is that we don't admire leaders a lot. Usually there's a lot of scrutiny on leaders. Why is this person a leader?
Skeptical.
Yeah, what does he or she have better than me? So when you're in a leading position in those countries, I think you have to be very self-conscious to be open, in my point of view, about where you're good at, where you can add value, and where you need other people's help. It might not work in every culture. For example, in India, it did not work that well that way because the leader is a bit like in Japan, needs to know everything, needs to have all the answers.
They came up with the word guru, right?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Leader is the guru.
But at the end of the day, if you are a certain way, there's only so much that you can change, right? And then people will I think, learn to accept and respect you as you are. So, that's the type of leadership behavior that I try to have. It's openness, transparency, and try to have a peer-to-peer relationship with the team where each one of us has a different role. But nonetheless, we're all people, we're all part of the same team.
It's interesting. I maybe it's the wrong thing, I'm not sure, but I've never used the personal names with my team members. I've always used the family name and son. So it's, Suzuki's son. It's not, Harumi-chan or something like that. I never use that very personal. I mean, they're working in a Western environment because I'm not Japanese. We use English, yes. But I've never gone that. I know for a lot of leaders do that. It becomes, they use the personal names. It's a much closer. I've never been quite sure whether I should do it that way or use the family name, because there's a certain delineator between you and them. You're still the boss, they're still the employee. Be friendly, but it's not crossing the line anywhere. That might be the wrong thing. Maybe I should be more like that. I don't know. That debate's out of my own mind. But yeah, I've always had a little bit of formality to choose to go that route. But it's a choice. I don't know. I could do it the other way. I could definitely do it the other way easily, but I choose not to, just to keep that separation. I think between I'm the boss, you work with me. As an idea, I don't know. Could be a bad idea. I don't know. But Rodrigo, I've really enjoyed our talk.
Thank you very much, Brad.
Very
Thanks for the
interesting
invite.
insights today. It was fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So please join us again for our next episode of Japan's top business interviews.